Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're going to continue on westward expansion and talk about how the United States achieves manifest destiny. How do we go from sea to shining sea? So Texas is part of the United States. Great for Texas. Great for your science teacher, Mr. O'Brien, because he's from Texas. But that doesn't explain how the U.S. gets the rest. That doesn't explain how the U.S. reaches manifest destiny. In fact, we aren't at sea to shining sea currently. We're at sea to big desert. How do we gain the rest? Well, long story short, we go to war with Mexico for it. So Polk is going to try to buy, during his presidency, California and the Rio Grande border off of Mexico. Mexico is going to refuse because at the end of the day, California is too valuable and the Rio Grande as well. Polk really wanted these things, so he kind of came up with a plan B on how he was going to take it. Emphasis on take it. Here's a map to explain the situation. Notice with the candy cane stripe on the map, that area is going to be disputed between the US and Mexico. Mexico believed that Mexico ended at the River Nueces, which is significantly deep into Texas's territory today. But the United States viewed Texas's border as the Rio Grande, which is what the border is today. So this area is disputed. If you are Mexico, you think you own it. If you are the US, you think you own it. This is where it comes to Polk's plan. Basically, this is what Polk was going to do. He was going to go into that territory with his best general, Zachary Taylor, which, gee, I wonder why he sounds familiar. If you say he's the 12th president, Mr. Shoens, I'd give you like the thumbs up. So Zachary Taylor is going to be sent into this disputed territory, which is perfectly fine. In the eyes of the U.S., they thought that was their territory. There's nothing wrong with the president sending soldiers into his own territory. But in the eyes of Mexico, was it soldiers and a general being sent into U.S. territory? No, it was soldiers and general being sent into their territory. And that's an act of war. So when Mexico saw that there was a U.S. army in that disputed territory, they attacked. And at that point, James K. Polk had everything he needed to go to Congress and say, look, I need to declare war on Mexico. He then asked Congress because the Mexicans had shedded blood on American soil. Now granted, this was disputed soil, and Polk knew what he was doing. And that's kind of the whole why I've been using these tones when explaining it. There's going to be a lot of opposition to this war. Now, the South was all for it. The idea of expanding Texas and going beyond, or maybe even conquering all of Mexico, sounds a great idea. But the North was extremely outraged by this. They even went as far to say that this was not the Mexican-American War, this is Mr. Polk's war, and that he was trying to, because he was a Democrat, extend slavery farther. Abraham Lincoln was a congressman at this time, and he pointed out that General Taylor invaded Mexico, not the other way around. And if you look at the map, there's obviously some legitimate concerns here. Now, we haven't quite done it yet, but when we do slavery, like a quick, short summary of slavery throughout history in the United States, there was a compromise known as the Missouri Compromise, which basically said that everything south of Missouri had to be, or could be slave, and everything north of Missouri was to be free. All this territory, outside of some stuff in Nevada and parts of California, is going to be south of this. Meaning in the eyes of the North, which was free, this was a huge opportunity for the South to gain more slave states. Well, anywho, when war with Mexico and America broke out, California wanted in. Ever see this flag and I wonder why it's called California Republic? Well, that's because California is going to rebel against Mexico, who owned them, and basically do the same thing that Texas did. So California is going to rebel. This guy by the name of John C. Fremont is going to take command of California and use the bear flag as their official flag, which is kind of weird if you ask me. Poor Mexico. Not only were they brought into a war by President Polk's kind of sneaky way to it, but now they have people rebelling in their own territory. And not only that, if Mexico couldn't even defeat Texas by itself, what are the odds they defeat the United States of America plus Texas. Very, very little. By 1847, all of Southern California was under U.S. control, and Mexico, it's not going to look pretty for them as well. Now, normally I'd go through some videos and also show you maps and various other battles, but I'm just going to sum it up for you guys. We're going to invade Mexico. General Zachary Taylor is going to move south of the Rio Grande, and he's going to go straight for every major Mexican city in Mexico. He's going to take Monterrey, he's going to take Buena Vista, and he's going to take it all from Santa Ana. Do you think that Zachary Taylor guy is going to amount to anything after this war? Yeah, he'll be the 12th president of the United States. People in the news will remember this is the guy who gained all this territory. So, president number 12. He'll die in office, but president number 12. There's other generals as well that's going to be in this who will make a name for themselves for later on in the future. General Winfield Scott is going to capture cities like Veracruz, an important Mexican port. These are all battles I normally do, but for time's sake, we're just kind of going through it quickly. He then even forced the Mexican army back into the capital of Mexico City. So literally the United States is invading all of Mexico. Let's put it in perspective for the map. Basically, the United States is literally marching into Mexico, and the Mexican army is being driven back deep into their territory. Look at the bottom of the map. Its capital is literally right there, Mexico City. Notice also on the map, there's only one red thing that said a Mexican victory. The rest are all blue. So this is a very one-sided war for the United States. Eventually, the Mexican army is going to be driven back into its own capital and basically going to have to hold out like the Alamo, like the Texans at the Alamo, which, if you remember, didn't go well for the Texans in the Alamo. They all died. Not that everybody will die in here, they'll surrender, but you get the idea of being surrounded. So Santa Anna abandons eventually his capital city. It's better to run away and live for another day. That's the George Washington approach, than to be killed there. And the United States literally marches into Mexico City. At that point, the war was pretty much over. Do you think Mexico will have any chance of recovering when their own capital city is going to be taken over? Most likely not. It's not the first time Mexico City was taken over, except the last time it was Tenochtitlan, and it was under the Aztecs, and a guy named Cortez was doing it. History does matter. Anywho, Mexico loses this war, and then they're going to do the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which, long story short, if you're looking at the map right there, is going to show you how much territory we are going to take from Mexico. Now, in reality, we could have probably taken a whole lot more territory, but you kind of get the idea. It's going to give us New Mexico, parts of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, California. You get the idea. So, bottom line, so Mexico agreed to accept the Rio Grande River as the north border of Texas. So the little bottom part of Texas is that border, and it is still today. Mexico is also going to recognize that Texas was part of the U.S., as in, like, we're not going to try to go after Texas anymore, even though it used to belong to us. And they ceded, which basically means to give up, a large stretch of land between Texas and the Pacific. What did Mexico get out of this deal? Basically nothing outside of cash. We just kind of gave them cash because we kind of felt bad and said, hey, rebuild your capital city. However, there's a little bit of darkness on that map that Mexico did not give up initially. It's a little piece of territory right here. And it's something that we're going to need if we're going to want the map that we have today in the United States. And the United States is going to have to purchase that. It's called the Gadsden Purchase. Basically, the United States will pay $10 million for that piece of land in 1853, and at that point, Manifest Destiny is going to be completed, and we have expanded from sea to shining sea. Now, $10 million, and if you're looking at the map, there's all the United States and all the territory given. That's a lot of money for that little piece of land there. If you notice, everything in yellow with the Louisiana Purchase, we paid $15 million for. Why do you need that little bit of land? Like, why would you pay $10 million for that little piece of land when we paid 15 for Louisiana? Well, it all goes back to the map. That little piece of land doesn't have things in the Rocky Mountains. When we get to the point where we want to make a Transcontinental Railroad, well, it's easier to go and avoid the mountains than to go right through the mountains. That's why we bought that territory. Long story short, after the Mexican-American War, though, Manifest Destiny is complete. The 48 states territories that you guys know and love, obviously Alaska and Hawaii is later on down the line, belong to the United States. Now, not all of these areas are states yet. It's going to be quite some time for a lot of them to become states, but at least the map is completed at this point. And anywho, you have a worksheet to do on this manifest destiny and this whole Mexican-American War. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the California Gold Rush, and then we will be finito when it comes to westward expansion. Take care, guys.